Eagle double G.
What's up, YouTube? This is your friendly neighborhood movie nerd, back to give you guys everything that is going on in the world of movies and television. And today we are recording a momentous occasion, because not only is this the next installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which, as you guys know, is still going stronger than ever, but it is also the next installment we get in a franchise that has really had its ups and downs since the beginning, and that is, of course, the review for Spider-Man Homecoming. And as I was writing this review originally, I just realized something that I completely missed, like, from the going attractions of the minute that these two people, is that this movie is actually a devil reunion between two of the movie stars, Logan Marshall Green and Bokeem Woodbine, who, if any of you would know, both starred together in a 2010 movie called Devil, written by M. Night Shyamalan, about 5 people trapped in an elevator being axed off one by one by, surprise, surprise, the devil. I didn't see it, but from everything I saw, it wasn't that good a movie, but I know that this movie is a reunification because those two were in this movie, so with that being the haphazard entrance that I could come up with, this is my review for Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah, Spider-Man!
I'm just kidding, I don't care. Bye.
After the events of Captain America Civil War, our newest version of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is sent back home to his apartment in Queens, where he is once again reduced to being a friendly neighborhood hero rather than the world-saving, ass-kicking Avenger that he thought he was going to be. Back in high school, Peter must now overcome the relative boredom that sets at him from every angle, while also attempting to muster up the courage to ask out his crush Liz to the homecoming dance. Things are thrown completely for a loop, however, when he has to deal with the Vulture, a guy who is determined to get what he believes is his, and without the Avengers to help him, Spider-Man must learn how to become a hero on his own. So I will say that I enjoyed this movie a lot more than I thought I would originally, because I am starting to get a little bit sick of all the movies that I'm gonna have to sit through now before we finally get to Infinity War, because they are starting to feel just a tad bit like filler, because as you know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is starting to feel more and more like a TV series. And I was sure that this was going to be another run-of-the-mill Marvel movie that's only set to placate us, but it surprised me by being more than that. This movie gives off the sense that it really is trying to be more than your average Marvel movie post all the Avengers movies, and I have to give it a lot of props for that. Also, can we talk about Tom Holland for a second? Because now that he actually has a full-length movie of his own under his belt, I can officially say now that he is indeed my favorite Spider-Man. I know I couldn't say that after the 30 minutes barely that he was in Civil War, but I can now officially say he is my favorite Spider-Man, because I could go with the obvious answer and say that he brings the idea, that bright-eyed fresh youth that Tobey and Andrew didn't bring, but I really can't say that because despite the fact that they were 30-year-old men, they still did have those massive baby faces, so it's not really that. What Tom Holland is able to bring to this role is he is able to bring that boundless enthusiasm that every kid who wants to be a superhero brings to this role, and it shows in every single shot. The thing about Tobey and Andrew's portrayal is that, yeah, they had fun when they could. The problem is the material that they had to deal with was always filled with so much downer and tragedy that you really couldn't find the little breathing rooms for levity in between. I know a lot of people are able to find that with the Raimi movies, but for me, at least rewatching them, the only bits of fun that I'm able to get are from how corny Raimi is able to make those movies. But other than that, those movies are sad fucking movies, and that is not the case with this movie at all. Also, the fact that this movie isn't an origin story does nothing but help it, because the movie actually puts some faith into its audience that they know who this character is, and that allows me to have an even better appreciation for this, because I've sat through 2 Spider-Man origin stories now, and I really, really appreciate not having to do that again a 3rd time. Also, as you guys know, this movie is famous for finally having a Marvel villain that is not just another one-off generic villain that gets killed off at the end of each of this movie, because Michael Keaton's take as Adrian Toomes, the Vulture, I'm so happy, because going in from the trailers, I knew that he was going to be the best part about this movie, but it's not even just that he's the best part of this movie. He feels like he's in another movie, because the movie actually starts with him. It doesn't start with Peter. It starts with him in order to kind of show what he's been doing in the cinematic universe since the Battle of New York and how that's affected him to this day. And we get depth. We get some character development. We get how relatable he is to the hero. We can relate to him. It's every, basic trait that is required to make a good villain, and they do a great job with it. I don't know if this is what little power Sony had, flexing their muscles, actually saying to Kevin Feige, oh, let's actually give this villain some depth. Let's not just make this another generic one-off villain. But I don't know who was behind it, but whoever was thank you for that, because now I can officially say that there is indeed another good Marvel villain, not one that I'm kind of like making excuses for, like a Zemo or an Ego. Because the thing about Keaton's take is that it's not just like this uber serious take. He's able to have fun with it, and that really shows. And when his one-offs between him and Holland, they're both hilarious and terrifying all at the same time. It's great. Unfortunately, the cast outside of Holland and Keaton, I really have to say, is a mixed bag, because here's the thing, despite the fact that almost every actor in this movie outside of those two was 100% wasted, I actually did like some of the other villains besides Keaton, because this movie showed what Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2 could not, which is being able to toss like 4 or 5 villains at you, but still not get bogged down or distracted, because there are 4 other Spider-Man villains in this movie besides the Vulture, but the thing is that they get so little screen time that they really come off more as cameos and Easter egg nods and setups for later movies, but this movie is able to do that so much better than Amazing Spider-Man 2 did. And this is where the Dell reunion comes in, because Bokeem Woodbine and Logan Marshall Green both play different versions of the Shocker from the comics. Bokeem Woodbine plays Herman Schultz, while Logan Marshall Green is Jackson Montana Bryce. Then you've also got the Tinkerer in there, played by Michael Chernus, and then there's a tiny spot that's supposed to be a lead-up, I'm guessing, for later movies, where Michael Mando, aka Nacho from Better Call Saul, actually plays Mac Gargan, aka the Scorpion. It's only like a bit cameo, and he's in one of the post-credit scenes, but you could tell that was a setup for later movies. For Peter's classmates, at least, I thought Jacob Batalon, the guy who plays his best friend Ned, I thought he steals every scene that he is in. He is really great. For the other characters, Laura Harrier is pretty good as Liz, but she's only really kind of there to be a foil for Peter. It's very well acted, and the characters are all extremely well written, but her actual role in the movie is kind of just to be a foil. I did actually surprisingly like Tony Revolori as Flash Thompson. I mean, considering this was the first Flash that's actually a character, rather than just being, a mindless bully like Joe Manganiello and Chris Zyka in the other movies, I actually did kind of like the kind of change from him being, the typical bully to him just, not liking Peter, even though they kind of didn't go anywhere with that. The one, who I do have to say kind of annoyed me a lot was Zendaya, because unlike the rest of the characters, she was the one who felt the most like a direct rip from Breakfast Club. I felt like she was being written so hard to be Ali Sheedy, and she was just there to be sarcastic and kind of just say, oh yeah, I'm cool, even though I don't care. I didn't like that even a little bit. Also, Donald Glover, who, literally the guy who, they were building up to be just like, oh, he's Miles Morales. Nope. He's in this movie 2 scenes, and he's Miles' uncle. That's literally it. For my biggest problems with this movie, it's gotta be with the other connections to the MCU, because this movie has such a great isolated feel going for it that whenever they shove in an Easter egg to try and connect it to another Marvel movie, it really feels completely out of place. The movie makes you very aware that it is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it does a pretty good job of establishing its own identity outside of that, kind of like Ant-Man did, because as you know, I hold Ant-Man in the pedestal of movie that is able to maintain its own identity while still existing in the MCU, especially having just come off of Age of Ultron. But versus Iron Man 2 is the complete opposite of that, which is Iron Man 2 just feels like it's shoving Easter egg after Easter egg after Easter egg with you, and it just gets distracting. This movie, I would say, is somewhere between those two with the Easter eggs, because the existing within the overall Marvel continuity, I think it does that well, but whenever there's an extra thing, just oh, we've got to get Iron Man's thing or Thor's thing, whenever Happy Hogan is in this and he's reciting off shit to reference the other movies, it feels really distracting, and it doesn't feel like it has any place in this movie. Happy himself, I have to say, I love the man for kickstart, because he helped kickstart in the universe, but Jon Favreau is easily the most wasted in this movie that he's been out of all the movies. He has less screen time in Iron Man 3, and he's more better utilized in that movie than he is in this movie. As for the Downey Jr. moments themselves, the scenes that were, kind of needed to pitch the trailer in order to pitch this new version of Spider-Man, I enjoyed. So he's in 4 scenes, right? He's actually really well utilized in this movie. You don't need to worry about him hogging the entire show. This is not the RDJ movie with some Spider-Man in it. This is the Spider-Man show for the most part. Out of all the scenes that Robert Downey Jr. is actually in, there's one scene between him and Peter that's legitimately great. The only problem is the trailer spoiled that moment completely. So if you've seen the trailer, you know what scene I'm talking about. There's 2 other scenes. The opening scene with him, which is pretty good, and then there's another really weird scene where he's talking to Peter, which is kind of just there to remind you, Tony Stark's rich, we didn't all know that. But then you've got the ending scene, which has got to be easily the worst one, because they bring back Gwyneth Paltrow for this one, and I'm like, oh, great, to kind of establish the whole her and Tony getting back together thing that they hammered in really hard in Civil War. Just oh, great, so they hammered in the point of them being done in Civil War just because she wouldn't come back for that, but she came back for a 2-second cameo in this? I don't like Gwyneth Paltrow's inclusion in these movies enough, but that scene just really pissed me off. Overall, it certainly is the best Spider-Man movie that we've gotten since 2004, which again, really isn't saying much considering the amount of crap that we've had to go through since then, but the charm and the isolation feel of this movie, I think, are its outstanding points. I think the John Hughes vibe, they really hit that on the head with you actually feeling like you're in a New York high school. I think they really did that well. Fantastic villain. Finally, we get a good Marvel villain. But the things holding me back were the ties to the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the direct Easter egg nods, and some of the characters' acting choices. Also, the dialogue could have been a little bit better at points, but overall, it's a really solid, enjoyable movie. I'm giving it 7 out of 10 stars. So that's it. That is my official review for Spider-Man Homecoming. Make sure you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you also click that like button and that subscribe button. Make sure you guys leave some suggestions for some more extra videos that you might want to see in the future. You guys know I do reviews and top 10s all the time, so just leave a comment and some potential suggestions as to what you might want to see. Follow me on Twitter at Movie Nerd Review. Also check out the website, movienerdreviews.com. That is it. I will see you guys next time. Go!